A child who is displaying consistent behaviors in daycare centers or in early childhood classrooms, they seem to be constantly combative with the staff and with the other students. It might not be behaviors. It might not be even a lack of communication. The child could have autism and they could be experiencing a sensory overload. So understanding what autism is can really help differentiate what is behavior and a child who is just misbehaving and a child who really needs additional support. Hi there, I'm Monica Matthews Smith, pediatric occupational therapist with over 22 years of working with children with autism and early education, as well as 16 years in the school district. And I help daycare workers and early childhood educators support children with autism more confidently and effectively. So let's talk about what autism is. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects the brain and the nervous system. So it can impact speech, so communication, behaviors, social participation, functional behavior, and then also just engagement and daily activities. So whatever developmental stage that the child is in and the activities that they are expected to perform independently, autism can have an impact on those. So not to get too technical, but the brain is divided into separate lobes. We have a frontal lobe, we have two parietal lobes, we have two temporal lobes, and we also have an occipital lobe. The frontal lobe is responsible for executive functioning, motor planning and functioning, language production, emotional and social behavior regulation, and attention and focus. Our temporal lobes are responsible for our auditory processing. Our parietal lobes are responsible for comprehension of language and math, sensory processing, spatial awareness and navigation, and also eye-hand coordination. And the occipital lobe is responsible for processing visual information. So interesting enough, some studies have shown that children with autism have different brain patterns than a child who does not have autism. So this just goes to show how autism can affect the neural aspects of the person. So there's currently no cure for autism, and there's no known cause of it. There are different theories of what causes autism. You might hear things from environmental factors, what's in the air, things that were ingested during pregnancy, medications, or certain types of food. You might hear certain mineral deficiencies cause autism. You might hear genetics. So there are a gamut of different theories, but currently there is no one known cause for autism. So let's really quickly get into some of the signs, symptoms of autism so that if you observe these in a student in your daycare center or your early childhood classroom, you can be on the lookout, and then you can also alert the parent or caregiver so that they can get the child further testing and get the support that the child may need. Let's understand that there is a spectrum of severity. Okay, so that means that there are children who can be on the lower end of the spectrum who might be more involved. So they might have less verbal abilities, more behaviors, less cognitive abilities, and needing more support. Whereas there might be children on the higher end who just might need a little bit of support, but otherwise are typically functioning. So as I stated before, one of the common factors that children with autism face are delayed speech. So you might have a child who is not speaking and they might be 4 and 5 years old, or they might be nonverbal. Okay, so delayed speech just basically means that even if the child does not speak at what is typically appropriate for development, that as they continue to grow and develop, that they might develop those skills. Whereas if you have a nonverbal student or child, then that means that child probably for the span of their lifetime will not be able to communicate verbally. Okay, so they might have gestures, they might point or do other things to communicate what they are needing and wanting, but verbal communication may be delayed. They might have trouble with social interactions and participation. So going out and playing with other children, they might not be interested in that. You might see them playing alone, parallel play, and they would prefer to play or to work alone. You might also see repetitive behavior. So this could also mean scripting lines from a movie that they've heard, or even something that they've heard somebody say. If they're just repeating those phrases, repeating those scripts, they could engage in self-stimulation behavior, which we also call stimming, which could be hand flapping, it could be clapping, it could be rocking. We call those stimming type of behaviors. Those are also repetitive movements. They may also seem interested in banging objects together consistently or banging things onto surfaces, any type of repetitive action of that sort. This can also include unintentional self-injurious behaviors, so head banging on the wall or on furniture, biting themselves, scratching, that type of thing. They may also show an intense interest or almost an obsession in a particular thing. Oftentimes, and this is just from my experience, it seems like many children with autism are really interested in technology, or there is one area that they're focused on that they are almost at genius level. So this could be in mathematics, this could be in technology with computers, this could be in writing or with words. And then also you might see them lining things up or be very interested in putting things in a certain manner or pattern. Oftentimes, children with autism have difficulty adjusting to change. So a change in their routine, a change in environment, even a change between staff or people who they're most familiar with can cause them great anxiety. They may appear rigid and just not able to handle spontaneous activities well. Oftentimes, children with autism may also have motor planning deficits. So this means that even though they may be expected to get dressed every day, comb their hair every day, do the exact same activities every single day, they might have difficulties performing those activities the same way every day. So just how someone who is neurotypical, we can comb our hair or brush our hair, or we get dressed the same way. We put our shirt on, putting the same arm in first. We put our shoes on, putting the same shoe on first. We tend to gravitate more towards a habitual way of doing things that we have to do pretty much every day. A child with autism might seem to have difficulties doing those things that we do every single day, and it's almost like they're relearning or trying to figure out how to do those activities every time they are expected to. And then, as we stated before, there are sensory deficits that children with autism may experience. So this could be a deficit in their visual system, their auditory system, what they see, what they hear, their vestibular system, their sense of movement, their proprioceptive system, their sense of body awareness and where they are in space, their tactile system, their sense of touch. So maybe they're not tolerating being touched or hugged, or they might be sensitive to different textures on their body, different clothing, and also different foods. So what can you do in your daycare center or early childhood classroom if you suspect the child might have delays or be on the autism spectrum? You can, one, tell the parent so that they can contact their healthcare provider. If a child is diagnosed with autism, they will most likely receive occupational therapy and speech therapy. And based upon any gross motor concerns, they might receive physical therapy. Now, you might have heard of ABA, or applied behavior analysis, which is another type of approach to addressing behaviors. But they are different from occupational therapy and physical therapy and speech therapy. Now, although a child might show delays prior to 2 years old, autism is typically not diagnosed officially until the age of 2. But if you see delays before the age of 2, the child can still receive services through programs like early childhood intervention, birth to 3, or whatever the early intervention programs look like in your state. We'll talk more about what sensory processing is in the next video. But if you are ready to have your staff trained on how to support children with autism in your daycare center or classroom, then check out the Autism Readiness Certification. We have trainings for professional development as well as a full certification training so that your whole team can be fully trained on how to make sure that your daycare center or classroom is fully equipped and capable to support children with autism. If you found this video helpful, then don't forget to like it, subscribe to our page so that you can stay up to date on more tips on how to help children with autism in an early education and daycare setting. And comment below, what is one thing about autism that you've learned in this video that you were not aware of? Until next time, bye.